Yeah, I'm Lance Feikert. I figured this is probably what happened. He came out to Burlington, and I get a text 5 minutes ago. My wife says cattle are out. So I hope my brother and dad can figure out how to get them in. And I'm just going to go through this presentation, have a good time, and hope that they can cowboy. And hopefully Mark and Cole don't worry about their cattle being out. So it's going to work here. But yeah, Mark and I, we'll go start a little bit here. I'm going to be the farmer part of this, and Mark will be the rancher part. Mark, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, well, first I need to explain something real quick. So Lance has got the mic today, and it's not because he's much more eloquent or better looking or smarter. It's because there was a basketball game last night, and his Jayhawks got beat by my Wildcats. So I felt sorry for him, and I said, Lance, just take the mic and take it away. But by the way, that's my son right there that introduced me, which is some of the nicest things he's ever said about me. But we primarily ranch in Comanche County, Kansas. We have a satellite ranch in Clark County. We also have a little bit, now we just picked up Cole and my wife have. We have a little bit that stretches out to Barber County. We are a commercially based Black Angus ranch. We probably have close to 100 registered cows, but we use them to raise seed stock, but we're our own best customer. You know, we've been intensively grazing and in management intensive grazing for probably 30 years now. And we are kind of late coming to the soil health deal. In 2014, we heard Gail Filler speak at a coffee shop, and we got excited because there was cattle involved in something and farming, and we were trying to figure out how to make it work, because if we couldn't raise alfalfa, we would plant wheat and just graze it out. And we got to listen, and we got a little excited about this whole soil health, and so we've only been into it 10 years. I can tell you that last night I already learned enough sitting downstairs to make the whole trip worthwhile. So I'm sorry you have to listen to me, but I've already learned something worth coming. So anyway, but I'm fourth generation, Cole's fifth generation. My great-grandpa Nichols came to the county on a covered wagon. My great-grandpa Lohrding, he was the first person in Kansas to purchase a combine. He was also the last Lohrding male that could fix anything. So anyway, that's a little bit about me.
And then, so I'm about 40 miles from Mark. We've been no-tilling for about 17, 18 years now. I think back in 2017, 18, I've met Mark before that, but knew Mark from before that, but I think about the same time when Gail was down there talking, we were visited, and then Mark had come up to No-Till on the Plains for being on a panel and talked, and we visited quite a bit then, and then we've kept the relationship going. And so, yeah, so we farm about 3,500 acres dry land, a little bit irrigated. The irrigated is anywhere between 150 to 500 gallon wells, pretty small. We mainly raise milo on the irrigated milo. We've gone from corn down to soybeans, now we're down to milo. Just trying to work that to make sure we're using our best bang for the buck on our moisture with our irrigation. On our dry land, it used to be a rotation of milo, then wheat, and then summer fallow, or we'd put a cover crop in there. We've planted anything from sunflowers to millets to hairy vetch to you name it. We've been dumb enough to try it to see what we can do, see how it works, and go from there. We use cover crops when we can, when we got moisture. If moisture looks like it's a good fit that time, we'll throw something out there after wheat. We've done spring cover crops, we've done grazing and stuff like that in the spring. It hasn't worked out like it should on paper, but we've been trying all these things. I'm fifth generation. My son, Lincoln, he'll be one of hopefully maybe sixth if he's interested in coming and helping back. And he's with me on the trip this time, and so we're having a good time. If you were here last year, my daughter Lara was here. She's the one out there selling the bags, and so we have a fun operation of doing a lot of things and putting our hands in a lot of different baskets. So to begin on this, how we got started. So in 2021, 22, I'll talk a little bit about where we were at on our farm side. We got into a rotation of going milo after milo after milo because the moisture was hitting pretty good, and the prices were good. And so when we, that's sometimes a no-no, but on the prices on what we're doing, the way we can get a crop every year instead of throwing out like a lot of guys do summer fallow and waste that year and to hopefully get a wheat crop that's going to maybe make them 30, maybe make them 60. We just decided let's keep on rolling that. And so in that 2021 D4 drought had just begun, and Mark and I were talking about with all the milo stocks that we had left, what to do with the milo. And so he was talking about bringing up some cattle. And so we talked about what we want to do, see where we want to go from there, and kind of that's how it all got started, if you want to.
Yeah, and as he pointed out up there, so I was starting cancer treatment. So in 17, we had a big fire called the Starbucks fire, and burned up about 3/4 of all of our grazing pastures at that time. And so it went straight into a D4 drought. It was miserable out there, and we had 26 miles of fence to put up. And anyway, long story short, I started getting a rash, and I thought, oh, it's probably just, being out in that. And being a male, I thought the best way to do it was ignore it, and I'd go to the doctor. But then after a while, since I'm married and wanted to keep being married, I went to the doctor. And anyway, I have, after a couple of times with PA, the head guy came in and said, you're unique. And I said, yeah, that's you got something really rare called mycosis fungoides, which is T-cell lymphoma. I said, well, great. So even though it's a blood cancer, it shows up on your skin. Well, basically, I got along fine with it till then. And it was starting to do some changes, and they were thinking we need to do some treatment. So, if you catch me in the corner, I'll talk a little bit about treatment and because the side effects from the treatment, I had severe neuropathy. So, and I know I don't look it now, but I'm a fairly active individual. I enjoy going out, working and moving reels and stuff. And so first of all, my feet went numb, then my hands started going numb. And I'm not a typical cowboy. I'm one of those weirdos that when I go to work, I wear a pair of pliers because it used to save me feet. Well, during that time, I wore those pair of pliers so I could zip my pants. So all this is going on. So I've never been great help, but I'm less help. And so we approached Lance, and of course, we don't like to do anything too small. We're talking about taking cattle. He said, well, how about close to 500? How's that work?
Yeah, and so I farm with my brother. My dad is retired, but he still is active. I'll say that he comes out and still does stuff and doesn't tell us, and then we figure out what he did, and then we got to figure out how to do it. So he's still active in our operation. I'll say that, and I appreciate him being out there because you got to get the irrigation hoses and water, everything fixed in January and February because there's not going to be wind or anything like that in March and April, May, and when we need to fix it. But so when we did that, and then my brother is part of the operation as well, and he kind of made the comment of he likes to look at the dollars and cents of the side of it. I'm more of the, I think this cattle impact will work. Been in these meetings forever. No-till plains forever. When we first started doing no-till, it was don't have cattle. We got rid of cattle, and then they said you need to have cattle. And then all of a sudden you buy cattle at the height of the market, and then you watch it go down, and then try to figure out how to make money back and all that fun stuff. So his saying was, if I'm not gonna make $250 a day, I'm not gonna get out of bed. And so I asked him, is that you or me and you both? So we had to figure out. So then when Mark approached us and said probably 500 head, and so I asked him, is that $500 a day or $50 a day, $100? What's our number? So we started working numbers and stuff like that. And he threw out a number, and I said, I think Kyle will probably get up in the morning for that. I will too. We'll put fence out, we'll run water, what else you want us to do, you know? And so we did that. So the first year when we were doing that, we wanted to figure out, we thought, let's try 2 different ways. So we put on 500 acres, we put just a fence around, just around 500 acres of milo stalks. And we put 140 head out there, out for about 100 days. And then the other 300, right? 320, I think, is give or take. We had 240 acres irrigated, 80 acres dry land, all together. That we had probably anywhere between 130 to 140 bushel irrigated milo, and 75 to 80 bushel milo on the corners. Real good milo year, really good stocks. Everything looked pretty good. So we decided we're just going to go ahead. The water's right there. We're just fenced around the 320, and we just started mob grazing them. And so we didn't know how far is 320 head going to go. So I did something scientific. I have 8 towers to the pivot, and I just said, let's pick out the 3rd one, and let's just go straight to the third tower, and that's our first run. Let's try it for 7 days. Well, then I divided 7 days, divided by 100. We got so many moves. This is going to work out great. So that year, we threw all that in, trying to figure out what to do. So the first 7 days or so, they ate through and did pretty good. We thought, that's probably enough residue to make it work. Let's go ahead and move them again. So what we didn't back fence. If we had a first move, we moved 2 more towers and then let them open up and go from there, and just kept doing that move. But then they could come back as well. And so what we learned from that then was, don't overgraze the first part, because the second part, third part, once they get finished, they're going to come back to the first, probably pick off that a little bit more, then they keep on picking off. Later on my slides, I'll show you a picture, but I don't have any dirt blowing, but I think everybody probably has seen dirt blowing. But when December 15th came around, and we've had them out there for 3 weeks maybe at that time, that was the 90-mile-an-hour gust and blowing and everything like that. And we grazed off way too much. And so that first and second slot that we had was a mess. Not just for 21, 22, or 22, it was for 23 and into 24, because we didn't have the residue. The residue blew away, so the topsoil, it just meant anytime we had a 20, 30-mile-an-hour wind, you could look over towards the farm and see the dust blowing. And that makes me sick. It makes me terrible sick. And so, as we're doing that, we're trying to learn how to do all that. So that's kind of where we worked on 21, 22, and that's what we did. And then through the 100 days, it worked out well. We did good. I don't know if there's anything else you want to...
The cows gained body condition. We didn't send them there thin. They were in good shape. But they definitely gained, and there'll be a slide later on, but when we've done this at home a lot, and when you're at home, it's too easy to cheat. If the weather's a little cold or whatever, well, you might go by and cake them, or you might unroll a little bit or whatever. Well, they're up at Lance's. So that was the first time we went through a whole 100 days with cattle, and they had 0 supplement except for salt and mineral.
Right.
And they gained body condition. And I think we'll bring about later. We calve later. We don't start calving until April. The other thing that makes this deal work is I can bring them up for long enough. Either that, because if I'm going to calve in February, then we got to either decide if he's going to calve out, take care of pairs, or I'm only up there for a month. Well, it's too much expense. It's too much work for a month. But for 3 months, it's a good place to be.
And I think that's one of the things down there, communication keys. And that's what, when we first started doing this, he came up and we started looking at, what do you think we can do? What do we don't want to overgraze it? We both have our thoughts in mind. We don't want to overgraze it. We don't want to stay up here too long. We don't want to stay up here too short. And then we want to get the right number and go from there. And I think, I didn't pull up the numbers for sure, but I think 21, 22, we had around 14 inches total moisture that year. So it was, like I said, we were in that D3, D4 drought and going from there. Then 2022, we had 22, 23, where we had, everything persisted. We probably only had anywhere between 10 to 12 inches of moisture that year. We still had irrigated milo. We had some milo that was 4 years in a row milo. That was a total disaster. I think I came up here the last 2 years and listened to Don Day's forecast, and by the end of the summer, we're going to start getting rains. So I thought, we're going to plant milo. We didn't get any rains, and we had some 3 to 5 bushel milo. That was pretty bad. But in my mind, we grew milo. It just didn't head out, or we had it out, but it didn't have anything in it. But the ace in the hole is I've got a cattle guy with 300, 400, 500 head that can bring something up, and he can utilize it. And so at that point, it's like, call him up and say, hey, we've got 280 acres right here. What do you want to do with it? And on that field there, he's like, we've got some fall calvers, I think they're open, right, with a bowl. Let's put them up there and let's see what they'll do. And that was one of our groups that we had.
Yeah, and so it's D4 again. So we've got less out in our pastures, and he's grown less. It's hard. It affects him just like us. So we can't bring 500 cows up. We can bring 320. Well, in between this, kind of a neat thing, you can see Aaron back there. Through Aaron and some contacts, we made a relationship, or we started a relationship with a ranch in the eastern part of the county, and they're wanting to do cows. Okay, and it's not a little deal. It's close to 7,000 acres. And so we basically make the arrangement that we're going to go. But we can't go till March. So we're in a D4 drought. We really kind of need to destock. But we also then need to turn around and stock 7,000 acres. So we got 300 we can send up to Lance. And then we're trying to figure out, we can sell and buy back, but we're like everybody else. We think our cows are special, so we try to have your own, and especially if you got to turn around and get cattle within 5 months. So anyway, my folks are 80. They went to school at Southwestern College in Winfield, and they had good friends at school. Lauren is an engineer, brilliant. And he was brilliant in that, so he decided to work miracles and make money in farming too. So he bought land, and he and my folks were talking, and he said, well, I got 700 acres of milo stocks. So Cole and I go up and look, and it's in Nickerson, so it's 2 hours away. He's got milo stocks. He's got them on 6 fields. He's got water at 1. He has electricity at 2. And he's got traffic around most of them. And so normally people would say, well, we got to figure out something else. And we just say, well, hold my beer. Let's see what we can do here. And so Cole and I and a neighbor went up there. We fenced it all. We made it very visible. And we set 200 cows up there that we had to rotate around. And the reason I'm saying this is because we could have bought hay and fed them at home. We could have. I mean, there was no doubt we could do that. But if we did that, what cover we had left for our rotational bed, what we had left, we had planned for when we come back to start cattle. And if we're there all winter, then we don't have anything there. We got bare soil. And so to us, it was worth the risk. It was worth the effort. And I will tell you, Lauren is, if any of you in here live to be 80 and are as active as Lauren, it's awesome. When we would go up there, he would haul water for us. And I'd see him jump up and in the back of a pickup, jump up and back. I mean, he's 80 years old and just running around like that. And the cool thing about it too was Lauren had a ball. It was something they never had cattle around for a long time, and he enjoyed it too. But a lot of times we box ourselves into something that we can't do. And that was, don't get me wrong, am I glad that we're not 2 hours away on milo stocks this year? I absolutely am glad, but I do know it can be done.
And then in 23, we put them in 3 different groups. We weren't moving any fence weekly or doing anything like that. It was all mainly on dry land, or dry land acres. And so, and then same thing, all milo stocks, no supplement. So I've got my own herd. I've got around 100 head. I had to drop numbers because of the dryness. I'm overstocked already, but I try to, utilize what I can during the year. But when Mark bringing some up, it's not hurting my group any or anything like that. It's actually helping our farm, I think, as a whole. But for every year since I've been messing with cattle, you always get the protein tubs out there. You gotta have the protein tubs, you gotta have the salt, you gotta have everything out there, is what I've been told. So the first year I watched Mark and no supplement, and watching his cattle get a better body score and increase that, and like, he's not spending this extra money, $140 a tub, and getting going through them every 2 weeks, and he's, so I watched first year, and I think it's kind of like Nicole said, it takes 3 years for you to learn something, and this year I'm on my third year, and I haven't put in any kind of protein tubs or anything like that out there, and I'm learning, I think, from what Mark's done. But basically we kept them out there just in 3 groups. We didn't move them. They just come back to water, going back and forth, and go from there. I'm trying to think I think on our moisture, we were 12 to 13 inches, and the milo, like I said, milo crop on several fields were anywhere between 20 to 40 bushel, down to 5, up to 80, just depend on the timing of the rain and things that went on. We started to get, since it was getting drier, was not for sure what our rotation is going to be. We're starting to get a little bit more shatter cane in where we've done milo a little bit too much. We decided we're going to do a little bit of summer fallow on some acres. So that cut us back a little bit, but also with the less amount of feed, milo stocks and stuff like that, that's why we had a little bit less numbers of cattle. Then go into 2023, 24. So this year, as we started this, we started talking about it. Mark's had a lot of rain. I didn't know for sure, do we want to do this? Do we want to bring it back? He's kind of in a point of like, do you want to bring anything up? It really was indifferent to me. But we started talking about we could send up one group of cattle, send them up here, and we had milo stocks, volunteer wheat, and volunteer triticale on one big area, and then we've had decent rains to get our wheat up and going. This year we decided after the first rain, about end of September, it rained. And last year what we decided to do was we're going to wait till middle of October and let it rain, and then it never did, and we never had a wheat crop come up. This year it rained, we planted it right away, wheat came up, looks really good. It got dry for a little bit until December and January, and then now we're back, now we've got good moisture. So we had wheat pasture as well, so my mind's thinking, well, we've got this one group on milo stocks and volunteer. Do you want to bring up some more, maybe on our wheat? We've got 2 patches of 160 acres. Let's put some cattle out on some wheat pasture. And so we put some flyweight heifers out there, and then also some bulls. So now we're utilizing 3 different types of cattle in what we're doing. So so far we've had 3.5 inches of rainfall, a little bit over 12 inches of snowfall. And I love dirty pickups that are muddy. It does not bother me one bit. So
at the same time that we're out at Lance, we've got some wheat pasture really closer to home, and it is really cool because we got some on a friend of mine, and he's a good operator, but he still uses a lot of tillage. So it's really neat to actually see when you go up to Lance's and you see the cattle out on wheat or triticale. And I mean, I'm not going to say that he's got a slide coming up, but how they can get around compared to how my steers are on the conventionally tilled. I mean, it is just a remarkable difference. And you know, the other thing Lance has up here on this about no government payment. Okay, so we love when people try experiments. We think it's great if they're funded, but what we really wanted, the reason we're talking about this is soil health is tied to financial health. Because if it's not worth doing, sorry. If you go broke doing something nice, I mean, it's not a long-term solution. So what we tried and we're paying attention to is, okay, if we're doing this, Lance wants to make money, Mark wants to make money, can we do this? Can we do something to improve the soil? Can we include, we reduce our input costs on our end? Can we make it all work? So that's kind of why we had that, we didn't get any, and I will take it back, I started thinking about that. I did get a little bit of government help when I hauled my cattle home.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't very much, but that's not 100% true, but I got a little bit of help. So.
And what I like about his mindset also is, most producers, farmer, rancher, anything like that, we're looking for the cheapest source that we can get to do something, and we don't put a value on maybe what people's time is or the value of what the product you're getting or anything like that. But, Mark, when we were talking about prices and stuff like that, trying to get things started, he had in his mind, this is what it costs me per day to run a head of cow, for one head of cow, for 100 head of cows, whatever. He has a price in there. And so he's looking, and he's given me what I think is a fair price, but also he's looking at it going, I'm still making or saving money if it's in his mindset of how he's doing it. And that's what I would appreciate about what you were doing on that. So the way we work things out, we'll talk a little bit more through here. Then also, like, cattle are going from an environment that's rapidly declining, and then, like I said, most of our ground is contiguous. It's easy to put a fence around. We can put out 4 or 5 miles of fence pretty quick, hot wire fence, and cattle might have to walk back a half mile to 3/4 mile to a mile, but they're fine. They do it right. Is there anything else you want to? Okay. So I provide daily care, the water, the fencing. The first year we had 1 death, right?
Yep.
I think we had 1 death first year. Last year we didn't have any. This year we had 1 that was a fluke. I don't know. We either call it a Feikert failure or a Lohrding luck. I'm not sure which way we do it, but it's going to be one of those. But we've had one die because the vet posted it, and he told Mark we've never seen it before, so.
That's Lohrding magic.
There you go, Lohrding magic. So, and then we've had one that got sick. A little heifer got sick, and then we've got another one that tried to do ice skating, I guess, and broke a leg, and so she's still trying to get up there. But we don't have a good set of corrals that can handle 300, 400, 500 head. I've got a neighbor that his mindset is cattle, and then he farms a little bit. And instead of him buying nice big equipment, he puts up nice corrals. And Mark pays him nice, I treat him nice, and I say, can we borrow your corrals for a few hours? And that's probably one of the best investments I've ever made, of being a good friend to him and he going from there, because it would not be fun trying to do portable corrals with 300 or 400 head. And then I'll provide some bales if the coverings, if there's snow. We finally got some snow this year, so we've done that. And so that's kind of what I offer on my side of it. So
yeah, it basically says I'm gonna write the checks. He's gonna take it, and that's perfectly. I'm perfectly good with that. I will say this: I've sent cattle to different places before. I keep sending them back to Lance. There's some places I've sent them before that we were like a Kentucky basketball player. We were one and done. So not all producers are the same.
And what I appreciate also about Mark and Cole is, this year we did agree upon price, and we were fine with it. And Mark came up and asked me, he goes, you don't have to say yes on this if you don't want to, but we're going to pay you a little bit more per head per day. Is that okay? I'm like, I'm not going to turn money down. No, yeah, well, and so I appreciate them seeing hopefully the value that we're taking care of and doing things.
Well, it has nothing to do with him having 3,500 acres of farm around 40 miles away. Nothing to do with that at all.
One of these slides Mark told me the other day when we were putting this presentation together, we talked, and he said something about the capacity or what it costs to run a cow with feed cost, non-feed cost, and so I just did a little research with K-State where the research and extension and what it's showing, and from 2018 to 2022, it's increased almost $200-300, and I think you said in 23 it was $1,350. So, if that's the cost of what people are actually paying for, at that 2022 rate, that's $3.70 a day. That's costing per head per day. But that's also like what Mark had said before. Not every cow's going to have a calf. Not every cow's gonna live, and so these numbers, you know, try to figure this out. And so that's kind of, I just want to show the slide here, and it keeps on increasing. I don't know the price of cattle going up as well, but still, what your costs are, you know, $1,200, $1,300 to carry for a year is quite a bit. The math that I have in my head, my farmer side, is if he's paying me $1 head per day, we've got 90 heifers this year. We're going to try to put them on wheat for 100 days. It's going to be on 160 acres of wheat. That's $56 in income for my side, if I'm looking at it right. I'm going to put another $15, $20 maybe on top dress. I'm calling it $40 an acre for 100 days of work. That's checking them, watering them, putting out fence. Most days, 20 minutes tops, most days. Some days a little bit more when you're trying to walk cattle in, it's muddy. And other days it's, you go check the water, they haven't drank anything, and you check, make sure they're in and healthy, and hope things work. But I also look at trying to figure out how much animal impact this first year we're going to have any kind of thoughts on compaction. I don't feel like it's going to hurt us anything. We're getting 2 to 3 inches. These things are 450 pounds, 500 pounds. They're not much, they're not very big, so they're not going down very far. Bulls maybe a little bit more, but that's what it is. Go ahead, Mark, if you want.
Well, like, you know, to make it work, we calculator, we have, we're weirdos, we got smaller cows. You know, our 4 to 6 year old cows are going to weigh between 1,000 and 1,125 pounds. So we do have a smaller animal. It will also, I will tell you this, that like if you're taking cattle in on a per head per day, 1,700 pound cows can eat more than 1,000 pound cow. So you can take in a lot more 1,000 pound cows than you can 15. You know, we used to always say, oh, you take an acre per month. But we have found out both at Lance's and at Nickerson, we can sometimes go 2 acres and run a cow for 100 days. So they're smaller, it's timed with nature, you know, they're pregnant, but they're not lactating, and so you got to match all that stuff up. But, you know, all of this is kind of stuff that everybody knew, and there's a lot of people in this room that are thinking, well, for 40, 50 bucks a day, or an acre, that's not worth it. But the cool stuff's coming up, because, you know, I go to these wild meetings and they talk about you need to add animals and it's going to help, but I never understood, okay, what is it? Because I really want farmers to come to me and say, would you please run your cattle on my fields? And I don't want to pay you as much as some other people will. And so this is what's cool. So we've been keeping track of this stuff. So we're on Milo stocks for a couple of years, and then we finally cut a cash crop off of it just last year, and that's what Lance is going to talk about.
So we also had, like a little bit where we had a little bit of drought on this, but so yeah, on the couple slides a bit later on, but yeah, so this year where we've had cattle, we had cattle graze 2 years back to back, and then we planted wheat that following winter, that following spring, and then so this last year we had 160 acre patch of wheat that had, you know, we had planted it, it came up slow, it looked pretty poor. I was like, I'm not gonna put any kind of inputs into it until we start seeing some moisture change. And then about the end of April, we started to get a rain here or there. And then in May, we got a little bit more rain, Well, then by that time, we'd kind of already crossed that bridge. How much fertilizer do you put out, or what do you do? And in my mind, it's like, let's just let it roll. Let's see what happens. And as I was looking at the wheat crop, I thought it could make 15, maybe 20, but it's not going to make any better than that. Called up insurance to have them come out and hoping he's going to give me 3 bushels or something like that. I'll take my insurance and we'll destroy it, do what that. And he came out and he told me, he's like, it's going to make 25. And I said, if it makes 25, I'll buy you a steak dinner, because this ain't going to make 25. And so we start cutting it. And one of the pictures that we have here, I'll skip ahead just a little bit. But it is on your left here. And that was my wheat crop on the left. It made 24.9. He was right, it made 25. But that was on 0 inputs. Every neighbor Most of my neighbors are summer fallow wheat. Most of them have 60 to 100 pounds of nitrogen out there. Most of them did a fungicide treatment. Most of them had that year 40 to 50 bushel wheat. So I don't have to put a lot of numbers together to figure out 25 besides planting and harvesting is going to beat that anytime for a year that they had a whole year of spraying, but then also herbicide, fungicide, workings, all that compared to when I've got cattle out providing something that we're seeing what's going to work. And I think we got...
He's being so calm right now. What was cool? The phone call I get at Mark, you gotta come up here and write a comment, because he can talk fast and he gets a little excited. And before that, he called me and he said, Mark, I had the crop just come out. And he goes, so I got 3 fields that he went and looked at. He said, what were they adjusted at 5 and at
12 and 25.
5 and at 12 and at 25.
Yeah.
And he said the same soils he knows he's placed. What was the difference? The difference was cattle here, no cattle there.
Yep.
Now, so that gets me excited because I'm thinking he's going to pay me less. He's going to want less next year for me to bring the cattle. Because you know, like I said, if you take that 10, 20 bushel difference, I don't care what crop, you know, that adds up to significant dollars. And then he's going to talk a little bit too about weed pressure too.
Yeah, and then also on another field that we had that we mob grazed, that field and then that other field were wheat. So we grew some triticale for green cover seed this last year, and so they come out and inspect your field and stuff and want to know what's been out there. So the prior year before we went ahead and that's where we mob grazed, and the first probably 100 yards or so in was our worst, and then it keeps on getting better. And we did put fertilizer out there because it was irrigated. We were trying to grow for seed. We were trying to shoot for 60 to 70 bushel. And the lady that came out, she called me up and she said, I think I'm done. But she goes, what kind of herbicide did you put out there on your triticale? And I said, nothing. Why? And she said, well, you had to put something out. And I said, no, there's no spraying. We didn't spray anything. She goes, every producer is out there spraying for weeds right now. How did you not do that? I said, I don't know. I mean, it's clean. And she said, this is by far the cleanest field I've seen this year or last without any kind of fungus or herbicide. And so that's what Mark and I started talking about, was that as the cattle are moving and as we're moving and doing that animal impact and got the manure and the urine and everything like that, what is that actually providing? What is that helping provide? Weed control? Is it helping to provide fertilizer? Is it helping to do continue to help everything going on in your soils? And so that's another benefit that we were seeing and going from there. So that's what. So
I taught school for 10 years so I could get ready to make a lot of money when I farmed and ranch. And I was a science teacher. And I'll be honest, I wasn't a very good student in college. I did enjoy my time there, but I wasn't a great student. I really didn't understand chemistry until I had to start teaching it. And so we've seen all this stuff happen, but I'll be honest, I really kind of understood last night in the lobby of the Fairfield Motel, talking to Corey Miller.
Yep.
I think I understand now what happened. Because he was talking, I mean, it was amazing. But basically, a dormant plant in the fall, it's dead, and we have a lot of mold and spores and different kinds of fungi in the air, and they're going to adhere to that plant. So the cow eats that plant, and it goes out the back end. Now, I didn't know this till talking to Corey, but even being in that rumen, that manure stays fungal. So when we get to spring and it rains, the reason you see all on that manure on your crop field that you grazed that winter is because all that fungal activity is starting to take off. The rain and other things help bring that into the ground. So now your soil is more fungal. So the weeds can't flourish there. And you now have your nutrients more available. So I just finally got this last night. I'm not very smart, but isn't that cool? And the sad thing is that there will be people that will be more likely to spend $100 an acre to spray something than they will to have cattle turned out and do the same dadgum thing. But you guys here are smarter.
So the rest of it, what kind of we already talked about through there. This has been back in just a quick slide here. This was when we had the 90-mile-an-hour gusts and stuff, and I came over just to see what was going on at the house or over at the farm, and I could see the doors were bending. And then I came back about 2 hours later, and those doors were both gone, and the other doors were sliding up and going away. So we now, long story short, the front door now is one of those power lift doors. Last year, we found out that the other doors that were sliding doors, the wind will come from the east, and it blew those in, and so now we have two power lift doors on both. So if we ever have those power lift doors go bad on that one, I'm done. I probably won't be around. This one here, I just took a picture on February 1st. I was out. Mark and I had been talking about when we're doing this presentation, and he said, yeah, take some pictures if you want to of things going on, a little bit more here and there. And so the ones that I just thought were cool, we got 257 head out there, and that day, I think I could have counted 257 head because they were so spread out. There were some that were on milo stalks, just small groups. There were some out on the volunteer wheat, some out on the triticale, and they all were just, you could just tell they were satisfied, they're happy. You just look at their manure, some's got milo in it, some's got running manure in it, others look good. It's just, it's something how on this part where there's 800 acres and this group, they are and that's what Mark had said about self-maintaining, and that was one thing. I go ahead.
We saw something kind of cool at home. So I used to never think, well, if they're out on green in the winter, there's no way they're going to go eat anything else. But it is really cool how they are smarter than we are. They will self-regulate. We had cattle out on a quarter. We have a 5-wire fence around it. We got a mixture of stuff out grazing. And I get a call, they got cattle out. I got a 5-wire fence. What do you mean I got cattle out? We got some little steers, and they had found a way to basically burrow under and get to my neighbor's milo stalks that were already being grazed. And they were out there. And I'm like, well, the first thing I thought, well, these are just idiots. And I brought them back. And you know what? 3 days later, I had another one out. They need something else, because we had a grass draw in there, and I thought they'll get whatever roughage they need out of that, because I didn't want to buy a bale. I put a bale of dry feed in the feeder. I haven't had a critter out yet, because they were trying to tell me something, and I was doing my best job of trying to ignore it. But when we fence wheat now, if we have a chance to fence in milo stalks, we never put a bale out, ever. Because they'll go out in that milo stalks and they will regulate themselves. And most producers will be surprised by the amount of time they will spend in milo stock.
When we brought them up this year, where we unloaded them, there was on the north side of a pivot road, there was 200 acres of milo. On the south was, I'll show you that picture of triticale, that's this tall volunteer. They stayed out in the milo stalks for 3 or 4 days, and then finally I watched one go across, and then once they went across and got a piece of that triticale in green, they were out there for the next 3 to 4 weeks and barely would come back to the milo. And then once they started going through they did a nice job of eating through that triticale, then all of a sudden they found the volunteer wheat that's a little bit farther up, and then they went through that, and then they come back to the milo. So it's been interesting to watch this year and what they're doing. The only other thing, then I'll talk about also milo in 2023. So when Mark and I were talking about this, about what was with the wheat and how that went out. Also, I think, well, is this going to correlate with our milo? I think it will. I just think the milo this year did not have a chance. We got all that rain that sustained us and got us through to about heading, and then there at the end of July, 1st of August, it gets hot, dry, our moisture was not there. It was just there. It was there to sustain the growth, but they did not take it where if we would have got 1 or 2 little extra rains there at the end of September to finish off, we might have had some 80 to 100 bushel where we had 40 to 60. And this is the picture on your right. That is volunteer Lohrding that maybe we didn't do a very good job of harvesting. It is hard to harvest Lohrding. We had a stripper head. 2 to 3 years ago, I tried to do it with a stripper head, and after 120 acres, I was pissed because I could not figure out how to set the damn thing. So we finally got our flex head and then went up there, and we were harvesting this high, and it went from 45 bushel to 65 bushel, and I thought, I just lost a lot on table. This might have been a combine error because maybe not getting it set right, maybe not. But I brought Mark up to look at the triticale and the Milo and everything like that.
I might have got a little excited.
And if he got excited, he had a poker face. But he's like, yeah, I think we can bring some head up. I think we can do that this year. I think we can. I'm like, okay, we can put some fence out. That's a work. And so once we started doing that and then watching those cattle, so this is where we would have had the Milo would have been grazed, mob grazed, and then we planted triticale, and now it's being grazed again. It'll go back to Milo this next year.
When you use cattle, you get to harvest 2 crops instead of 1, because you get to run your combine over it, then you get to run cattle over it and get something, and you're also adding biologicals to your feed. And the other thing, and this is a little personal to me, but I am a guy who's got cancer, and I am a big advocate of no-till. But if you guys can spray less, I would sure as hell appreciate it. Because that, the cool thing about this whole movement is that it is in constant, we are learning stuff all the time. I'm slow, so I'm learning behind the rest of you. But if cattle can shut your sprayer off 1 or 2 more times a year, it's good for your neighbors, not just your field. So keep that in mind. And right now, people are starting to pay attention to their food and how it's raised and what we should be at this time for what things that we're doing. We should be able to benefit the rewards of it. But you got to decide, are you going to fight it, or are you going to maybe learn from it and earn something from it?
And that's what, in most years, in my farmer side of the brain is, hey, let's take care of that wheat stubble, or the volunteer wheat. Let's take care of the volunteer triticale. We, in that area where the volunteer triticale and the wheat's at, we have 0 farmers with any wheat around, so not to piss off the neighbors, that there's all Milo stocks, everything like that. I tried to take care of, but also this year we were kind of in a point where we got the rains late and we had no volunteer ever come up. So when the volunteer did come up, the wheat was coming up at the same time, so I wasn't as concerned about that. This year we've finally got some snow. On the picture on the right, we were moving the cattle. We want to make sure we got them in, but I can remember my grandfather on my mom's side back in, I don't remember what, 1950, something like that, but there's one draw that he told me that they had a big blizzard that then, and they couldn't get to their cattle for 2 to 3 weeks. And he said that saved my herd of 50 or 60 head, whatever it was, and they just stayed back in this draw. And so in my mind, when they were talking this blizzard coming up, well, heavier snow, but then the blizzard coming up, I'm like, calling up Mark, this is where I'm taking them. We don't have anything set up for them to be, to go to. We weren't going to haul them out and send them back down there to haul them back, and that we just said, ride it out, girls. Let's see what happens. So we carried a bale. They followed us down through there, and they survived and did fine. Animal impact, what we're seeing, we're just trying to leave as much residue now as possible. I'm seeing 1 to 2 inches of what they're going in on our soils. Our soils haven't been worked for 18, 19 years. I think we have something good that we're not going to ruin it, but we'll see what happens and kind of go from there.
So I have a cowboy theory, which is worth very little, but I'm going to go ahead and share it. So when we do our grazing, and we're in an semi-arid environment like you guys, for most of you. So when we do a high density graze in our pastures or something, we may not see the results of that for 2 or 3 years because it has to rain for things to happen. I told Lance, I said, I don't know, but I've got a theory that one thing that might help, and it may not, But, you know, when the buffalo moved through here in a big herd, they didn't take half, leave half. They had a big time disturbance. Well, I do think, and I thought that was cool, what we just saw in the big room. It said something about you need to maximize the disturbance. Well, that disturbance is not going to affect his organic matter or anything like that, but it might be enough of a disturbance to, you know, stimulate things. You know, James Harris said the reason we all tilled is so it release the nutrients. I don't know. It would be cool if that helped release the nutrients for next year's crop. If it doesn't, I'll never bring it up again.
And also got little hoof prints out there that'll hold water. And if we keep getting these rains and the fog days work out, then we're going to be wet, and hopefully they'll have their cattle off there by then. We'll have wet, and then we'll be ready for planting dryland corn and try to go at that. You can read through what our future plans are, but I will tell a story. I got a field that's right next to my house that was a failure in 2022. So then we had milo on it. In 2023, we decided to plant milo again because that's just what we were going to do. And in 2022, that was what made 5 bushel. The adjuster came out and he said, I just want you to go out and just cut as much as you can that's standing, that's good. And so I had probably, out of 280 acres, maybe 40 acres that I had cut. Just went and picked around, and then we left whatever for Mark's cattle. It wasn't going to hurt them, a little bit of grain here and there. This last year, I didn't have the slide, I don't have the capability of pulling off my yield monitor and trying to match up map for map. But what I thought was kind of cool is where we were going through some of our milo this year, and it was raising somewhere between probably 60 to 100 bushel, and there was some good spots out through there on limited moisture after a failure the year before. And I'm looking at my yield monitor thinking, this isn't right. And then I come up to a spot, and all of a sudden it dropped to 30 to 40 bushel, maybe 20. I'm just sitting there, I can't figure out this. I mean, it looks all right, it looks good. There's something not going on there. And so we're cutting the exact same way. And then it hit me when I got a little bit farther up through the field, and I thought, this field is where I cut the better milo. This is where this milo 2 years ago was probably 50 bushel milo in a little patch. So I cut that, got that milo, but then the rest of the field was junk. I didn't mess with it. And so I'm thinking wherever my best milo was at was where my failure was at the year before. My worst milo this year was where I had my best milo 2 years ago. I can't confirm or deny that. That's my farmer logic. But as I went through that field, you could tell the best spots were on there. And so I look at, even thinking of failure, what to learn and seeing what we can do. You know, how 1 year's impact can impact the next year, even when you're looking at things year to year basis. And so, then, like I said, both our this long-term goal, both for Mark and I, we look at it as, I think he felt pressure this year to bring something up. He didn't want to lose something that we've been doing for the last couple of years. I was okay with not having anything. I've always said I'm either an optimistic pessimist or a pessimistic optimist. I'm not sure which, but I always look at things. I think things will get better. I think they'll do better, but I know they won't. So, you know, and so I don't know how to explain that. You know, it's going to rain sometime, right? I mean, but he kept on saying, you know, well, I'd like to bring something up, and I was like, Mark, you don't have to. It's not that big a deal. And then I think when we brought him up and looked at the volunteer wheat and the volunteer triticale and stuff like that, he said, I'll bring up 200 some head. Then when the wheat started going up and getting better, I think he's like, we'll bring some more up. But what we're looking at is this is going to be a 10, 20-year deal. That Cole might be working with Lincoln 20 years from now. Mark and I can hopefully be sitting back and letting them figure out what to do.
I'll be dead, but you'll be
I don't know if
But you know, Lance can get more per head per day from some people, and I can rent some ground cheaper. But if I go every year and try to make the absolute best deal, and I have to find a new place every year, that's no fun. So, you know, like I said, I'm fully aware that Lance has 3,500 acres of farmland 40 miles away. I'm fully aware of that.
So that's, like I said, we're just trying to build an operation, and hopefully the operations for the next generations to come. With that, I think is that all? That's all I've got. If you guys have any questions.
This is for Mark. Have you ever considered coaching Lance into setting that wheat combine and wheat harvest so it throws a little bit more? Does that take more?
That's when he comes up and just starts talking to me and says, "Speed up a little bit."
I will tell you, it was a lot more fun at his harvest than I remembered harvesting. It was really nice. I sat there on a machine that worked, and if it didn't matter. I could go. So. Yes, sir.
So could you touch a little bit on, prior to doing this whole regenerative farming practice, we still got some corrals that have, extra piles of manure and stuff. What are you seeing in, loading that up and spreading it? Are you seeing much difference? I'm sure there's a huge difference, but touch on what are the yields that you're seeing on spreading that dead manure versus having cattle out there?
Well, yeah, I think for us, just like on that one where there's no inputs at all. Like I told Mark, I said this year we put top dressed our wheat because we could see that we're getting moisture and everything like that. I should have left 20 acres here or there just to test and see, does this make 60? Does it make 50? Does it equal out? Do I need this fertilizer or not? And so, to ask your question, to answer your question, I guess, where I really think if we were at the point where we can move them daily, and Mark's kind of said the same thing, we probably could increase how long we stay out there, but also the manure and urine and everything's gonna be spread out a little bit more through there and make that work. And yeah.
I don't know. So another thing we don't do, now I think we might change this because we've never had 30 inches of rain before, but we haven't poured our cows for 15 years. I'm sure our load of parasites is a lot more like cows in east of Wichita than they are where we live right now. But I still think that, so Lance has done so many things correctly as far as soil health. The last piece that he hadn't done a lot of was adding livestock. And our livestock hadn't been poured. They're a little lighter. And I think we saw a big, so I guess what I'm saying is if you got a list of 10 things to do and you just add cattle, I don't know how much of a result you're going to see. I don't know. But I think they're all important. And I definitely, I'll tell you this, if I was a farmer and you were offering to put manure on my field for free, I would sure not say no.
Right.
But I do think that maybe there is something to the fact when a live animal is putting it there versus hauling it from somewhere else, I think there's probably a little bit better effect, but you're sure not getting near as much of it.
And that cat, we never have run a manure spread or anything like that on our fields. It's always either top dressing or doing something we never have run anything like that. Just, I don't like the compaction of the tires and the weight going through there. The one thing I never met Mark's dad until I think the first year when I never had met him before until he brought it up, and then he was going through the cattle one day and I got in there with him and visiting, and he was just really appreciative. He's like, I'm really glad you guys are taking these cattle in and everything like that. And he kind of looked at me and said, so how much are you paying me for the manure and the urine? And I was like, Mark and I didn't have that conversation. And he goes, well, I think we probably ought to. So Harley is great. And so it's one of those things that it's been a pleasure and to work side by side and then to kind of learn and see what we're doing and go from there.
Dad always says, Mike, the difference between my management style and his is he always knows when 12 o'clock is and it's time to eat. So anyway, he's a dandy.
Anything else? Yeah.
You always doing weekly birthday?
We haven't done any of those weekly. So when we had those cows that were the fall calvers, we did move them every 2-3 weeks. But I don't know how to say this right, but sometimes people don't want to go out and move cattle every week or something, and it's a lot easier to put a fence out one time and go from there. And so, right, Lincoln, do you enjoy putting out fence? There's times, okay, see, he answered it right. He shook his head no, but he does go out and help me. But there's times when I think if we can extend the growing season or the grazing part of it and do weekly moves or daily moves or something like that, then I say it's all right. When we're setting up for just 100 days or something, then I think we're letting it go. I don't know. Yes, sir.
Commend the two of you for, the relationship that you built, just to show us that, farmers and ranchers can work together.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm pretty weird, there's not many people left that'll talk to me, so I'm trying to hold on.
You got a goal for what you're shooting to take off your Milo? I mean,
Yield?
you know
Or-
how much you're removing?
No, so what the question was how much we will remove. A lot of it is, I know I don't want to remove 100% because of blowing. Whatever I feel comfortable with as we're doing it. When we're moving those weekly moves, the first 3 moves, I felt very uncomfortable. And so we were like, I think we went like maybe 8 days first and 8 days, and then I was like, let's jump it to 7. And then we started figuring out how many more days we had left. And then but that 6 to 7 was about right. And then they weren't walking back there and trying to pick stuff off and go from there. So it's like right now we're at a point where they're so spread out on both the group, but on the main group, we're not going to have any kind of problems, whether it's triticale, whether it's volunteer wheat, whether it's milo stocks. I could bring my cattle over for 2 more months and still be comfortable with it and go from there. So, yeah.
So in that field by your house where you cut the best patches out, am I understanding you right that what you left was better the next year?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that was just because it was more vegetative and so the cattle
I-
focused on those areas and you got better animal impact?
The cattle actually took more of the plant on the failed milo, okay, than where I cut. So I don't know if it's still the nutrients that were in that area, still that they didn't get all used. I don't.
That's exactly what we saw. My theory is there was more sugar content
Yep.
in where it was more vegetative. I mean, they took that way down
Yep.
before they went on the.
Every year since we've had Mark's cattle, the terraces get taken out first because the terraces are the failure, and the terraces then by now are too clean. But you can't do that. So, all right. With that, if you guys we'll be around. We do like to talk, so if you want to visit, we will talk. So, thank you guys. Awesome, man.